Today I want to talk to you about Joseph, the king of dreams. I remember as a little girl when I used to play Christmas or biblical stories, probably April, but definitely around Christmas. And I remember it seemed like it was almost every year, probably when I was in middle school or high school now. And they would play Joseph, King of Dreams, and I could see that one and I loved it, and I thought that was my favorite Bible story. And I would always record, and I have it as an adult when I recorded it on what is it, VHS. I have it recorded when I recorded it off of TV, and as an older adult, I love that story. I love Joseph. I want to talk today what it probably felt like for Joseph to be back in the presence of his brothers for a number of years that they had discarded him and probably thought he was dead. I want to read Joseph's brothers go to Egypt. This is when Joseph is crowned um, the second in charge, the governor of all Egypt. I do want to say I am now going over the book in chronological order. For the last 2 years, I believe, I have the Bible app and I do the 365 days, and it wasn't in order. It's a story here, story there, story there. But I enjoyed it because it'll snap you out of just following along. Because I have read the book, the Bible from Genesis until about, not Revelations. I'm reading it now, but no ma'am, no sir. To about a certain point, and then I started jumping around for the last couple of years. And so now I love Joseph. I love the story about his brothers and everything and the 12 tribes. I love the New Testament. So I want to pick up on Joseph's brothers go to Egypt. This is going to be verse 3. Then 10 of Joseph's brothers went down to buy grain from Egypt. But Jacob did not send Benjamin, Joseph's brother, with the others because he was afraid that harm might come to him. So Israel's sons were among those who went to buy grain. For there was a famine in the land of Canaan also. Now Joseph was the governor of the land, the person who sold grain to all his people. So when Joseph's brothers arrived, they bowed down to him with their faces to the ground. Remember that, they bowed down to him with their faces to the ground. As soon as Joseph saw his brothers, he recognized them. But he pretended to be a stranger and spoke harshly to them. Where did you come from? He asked. From the land of Canaan, they replied, to buy food. Although Joseph recognized his brothers, they did not recognize him. Then he remembered his dream about them and said to them, you are spies. You have come to see where our land is unprotected. No, my lord, they answered. Your servants have come to buy food. We are all the sons of one man. Your servants are honest men, not spies. No, he said to them. You have come to see where our land is unprotected. But they replied, your servants are 12 brothers, the son of one man who lives in the land of Canaan. The youngest is now our father's, and one is no more. Or the youngest is now with our father, and one is no more. Joseph said to them, it is just as I told you. You are spies, and this is how you will be tested. As surely as Pharaoh lives, you will not leave this place unless your youngest brother come to them. Send one of your number to get your brother. The rest of you will be kept in prison so that your words may be tested and see if you are telling the truth. If you are not, then as surely as Pharaoh lives, you are spies. And he put them in the custody for 3 days. And then on the third day, Joseph said to them, do this and you will live, for I fear God. If you are honest men, let one of your brothers stay here in prison while the rest of you go back to take the grain to your starving household. I bet not only was God dealing with Joseph during those 3 days, and Joseph felt some sort of way because during those 3 days, I guarantee you feeling all this emotion that y'all discarded me, y'all threw me away, y'all sold me. I'm one of your brothers. How could you dare do these things to me? I'm the tribe of Israel. I'm the tribe of Jacob. Can you imagine those 3 days? And then he knew, and he could have known at the very beginning, I'm not gonna keep them, because that my poor father, what would he do? All his children are not with him anymore, because if anything, Joseph loved his father and he feared God. So while God is dealing with him, and then he comes after 3 days, because he wants to teach them some sort of lesson. He wants them to learn. It cannot be the lesson that he has been learning all these years, but he wants to teach his big brother some sort of lesson. And he says, okay, I'm going to let one of you stay, and then the other 9 of you can go, but you have to retrieve your youngest brother to prove that you are not spies. And here is my question. I wonder also, how did he end up choosing the one brother to keep? Okay, Reuben replied, didn't I tell you not to sin against the boy? But you didn't listen. Now you must give an account for his blood. They did not realize Joseph could understand them, since he was using an interpreter. That's verse 22. He turned away from them and began to weep, but then came back and spoke to them again. He had Simon taken from them and bound before their eyes. Now, how did he choose Simon? Now, here's the part before there. When he's listening to them and they don't know he can understand, and he's listening, he's hearing them, and Reuben says, I told you not to do that. And he's like, how hurtful. It's like, at least Reuben was trying to fight for me, but Reuben, you didn't fight hard enough for me still. And you turn and you weep, because that's crushing. How do you put yourself back together? That's my question. How do you put yourself back together to say, okay, let me put my big boy pants on and say, okay, I'm going to keep Simon, and you other can go back to your father and prove that you have a younger brother. How hard is that? How crushing? But I was always wondering, how did he choose Simon? Because now I kind of thought he didn't choose Judah because Judah was pleading with his dad. Father Jacob, we have to go back. We have to not only get Simon, but also we need some more food. We're all going to perish if we don't go back. I told you I'll give my sons, if something happens to, Simon or Benjamin, if something happens to Benjamin, you can take my sons. And Jacob is so furious, and he's like, why would I try to kill my, my offspring off? I don't want that either. And then, finally Jacob says, okay, how hard of it was for Jacob. But during that time, those brothers are gone, and he has Simon, and he's treating Simon good. Simon is doing good, and he wasn't mean to him or cruel to him. But how tormented was Joseph during this time? Think about it. How tormented was Joseph, waiting to see how long would it take for him to see his father, and what's his next step, and what's the next step, and what have my brothers learned? I think that was the biggest thing. What have my brothers learned? Have they learned anything from this? Have they learned anything from this? That's the biggest thing I always wonder about. I wanted to go to also 44. So when we go to 44, and the brothers all come back, and it says, verse 44, it says, now Joseph gave these instructions to the steward of the house. Fill the men's sack with as much food as they can carry, and put each man's silver in the mouth of his sack. Then put my cup and the silver one in the mouth of the youngest one. Okay. Oh, I wanted to talk about when they did come back. Okay, the second journey, 43. The famine was still going on. Judah said, I already talked to you about what Judah said. He was like, Dad, we gotta go back. We gotta go get Simon. We have to go. I'll account for Benjamin. We're not gonna let anything happen to Benjamin. Now the men were frightened. Okay, so they're with Joseph, and when Joseph sees his baby brother, how he wept, and he was sad. Let me see. Let me get it together. Now the men were frightened when they were taken to the house. Okay, so when they had Benjamin, the baby brother, and Joseph played another trick, if you will, by he put his silver drinking cup when they all had that meal together. He put that cup into the baby boy Benjamin's bag. And so when they was able to leave and going back to their father, they're thinking they're doing good. We put double the money in the back in the bag. What he said that we didn't leave, and what he put back in the bag, we put double the amount in our sacks. We're on our way back to our dad. We got Simon. Everything is good. Thank you, Jesus. Let's go. So when they're going back, Joseph says, go check them. He sends the soldiers back out to check them because he had put secretly his gold cup, I think it was gold cup, into Benjamin's bag, his full brother, the baby boy, who Jacob was trying to protect and keep because that was the one that Rebecca had, the one whom he truly loved out of his wives and what bed warmers, what I forgot what you call them. And so the soldiers go back. They found the gold cup. They take them back. And can you imagine? I wanted to read. Can you imagine the brothers holding their heads down and so sad that Benjamin has possibly been taking the cup? Like, how foolish is this? And what can we do when? And he's second to Pharaoh. He can kill us. He can put us all to death. Okay, so I want to get to the cup. Oh, my Lord. Okay, verse 18, 43. Let's see. Now the men were frightened when they were taken to the house. They thought we were brought here because of the silver that was put back in our sacks first. He wants to attack us and overpower us and seize us as slaves and take our donkeys. That's what they're thinking. So they went up to Joseph's steward and spoke to him at the entrance of the house. We beg your pardon, our Lord, he says. We came down here first time to buy food, but at this place where we stopped for the night, we opened our sacks and each of us found our silver the exact weight in the mouth of the sack. So we have brought it back with us. We have also brought additional silver with us to buy the food. We don't know who put our silver in our sacks. It's all right, he said. Don't be afraid. Your God, this is Joseph, your God, the God of your father, has given you treasures in your sack. I received your silver. Then he brought Simeon out with them. The steward took the men into Joseph's house and gave them water and washed their feet and provided fodder for their donkeys. Okay, this is when they're coming back for the second time. Okay, I'm trying to jump into the silver that was gone in the cup. Okay, so we're going to go to chapter 44. I want to get to, okay, I told you that they brought Benjamin back and they had a feast, and then Joseph played that other trick on them. And this is what I want to get to, because Joseph had all of his brothers at the table. When they get to this part, Joseph had all of his brothers and they brought Benjamin and they're all eating, and Joseph sat them according to the oldest all the way to the youngest. And Benjamin peeped that. He said, look here, brothers, we're all sitting according to our age. Look. And when Joseph had everybody served, he gave Benjamin a double portion according to what everybody else had. He gave his little brother a double portion. He had nothing to do with Joseph being kidnapped. He was a little bitty baby boy at that time, and he weren't with the other brothers or anything like that. So this is the part that is so something else. When they stuck up for Benjamin, when Joseph was testing them again, and he was gonna keep Benjamin because he was trying to say that Benjamin took his cup. and how all his brothers stood up for him and said, no, you cannot take him. This is the part of what I want to get to, that is so touching and so endearing and such a big thing. Okay, this is 44:18. Then Judah went up to him and said, pardon your servant, my lord. Let me speak a word to my lord. Do not be angry with your servant, though you are equal to Pharaoh himself. My lord asked his servant, do you have a father or a brother? And we answer, we have an aged father, and there is a young son born to him in his old age. His brother is dead, meaning Joseph, and he is the only one from his mother's sons left. And his father loves him. So pin that. So the wife that Joseph was truly trying to marry, she took so long to have children. Everybody and their handmaidens had a baby before Rachel could even have a baby. So when Rachel, whom Joseph absolutely loved, finally had a baby, Joseph, whom he absolutely loved, and then her last baby, Benjamin, that she had, and she died right after he was born, you know, he just cuddled them so, and then you know how when you're older and you have a baby when you're younger, then you're more nurturing and caring and everything else. And so then you said, so verse 21, then you said to your servant, bring him down to me so I can see him for myself. And we said to my lord, the boy cannot leave his father. If he leaves him, his father will die. But you told your servants, unless your youngest brother comes down with you, you will not see my face again. When we went back to your servant and my father, we told him what my lord had said. Then our father said, go back and buy a little more food. But we said, we cannot go down. Only if our youngest brother is with us, we can go. We cannot see the man's face unless our youngest brother is with us. Your servant, my father, said to us, you know that my wife bore me 2 sons. Here it is. One of them went away from me, and I said, he has surely been torn to pieces, and I have not seen him since. If you take this one from me too, and harm comes to him, you will bring my gray hair down to the grave in misery. That's what their dad told them. So now if the boy is not with us when we go back to your servant, my father, and if my father's whose life is closely bound up with the boy's life, see that the boy isn't there, he will die. Your servants will bring the gray head of our father down into the grave in sorrow. Your servant guarantees the boy's safety to my father. I said, if I do not bring him back to you, I will bear the blame before you and my father all my life. Now this is our good Judah, who's in the line of King David, Solomon, Jesus. That's that line. That's the line. That's where that's coming from. Judah put 10 toes in, and he was fighting for his brother. He was fighting for, no, you will not keep Benjamin, and you will not keep Simon, or my father will die. He was fighting. I gave my word for him. You cannot take him. You can't have him. Now then, please let your servant remain here as my Lord's slave in place of the boy, and let the boy return with his brothers. Judah is like, take my life instead of Benjamin. No, you can't do that. And how can I go back to my father if the boy is not with me? No, do not let me see the misery that will come to my father. And then verse 45, this is when Joseph wept. Ooh, baby, can you just imagine? Let's take a break here and talk about, let me read this, and then we're going to talk about some more stuff. Then Joseph could no longer control himself before all his servants, and he cried out. Can you hear this? Can you feel this? Joseph cried out, have everyone leave my presence. So there was no one with Joseph when he made himself known to his brothers. He took that wig or whatever. When I watched the movie, he had a wig on like them pharaohs. And he wept so loudly that the Egyptians heard him, and Pharaoh's household heard about it. Can you imagine weeping so loud? There's the only time Joseph is known to weep is when he in the presence of his brothers again. Can you just imagine Joseph weeping? Can you imagine your heart being ripped out? Can you absolutely imagine? Y'all didn't fight for me like y'all fighting for Benjamin. Why didn't you? You didn't fight for me like you fought for Benjamin. You see what I'm saying? And it says, verse 3. Can you imagine him crying and all so loud that the pharaohs and their kingdom? Because you know Joseph, and I don't imagine them right next to each other, because Joseph was in charge of all the crop and the granary and doing this and doing that. So I can't imagine him right next. Like, he's not that far, but not that close, that he weeping so loud. Can you just, all that release from all those years of where he was to now understanding the glory of God and his promise when he was a little guy in a dream. Joseph said to his brothers, I am Joseph. This is 45 verse 3. I am Joseph. Is my father still living? Can you imagine him having all these questions? Is my father still living? But his brothers were not able to answer him because they were terrified at his presence. Because y'all imagine them, they ready to fight, kill, and destroy, and then you take your wig off, you crying, and they froze. They are frozen. They know not what to do. Do you hear me? Come close to me. Then Joseph said to his brothers, come close to me. When they had done so, he said, I am your brother Joseph. I'm the one you sold into Egypt. And now do not distress and do not be angry with yourself for selling me here, because it was to save lives that God sent me ahead of you. For 2 years now, there has been a famine in the land, and for the next 5 years there will be no plowing and reaping. Verse 7, but God sent me ahead of you to preserve for you a remnant on earth and to save lives by a great delivery. Can you imagine that? Joseph come to the full understanding. He knows. Let's go back. He saw this when he was a little boy. He saw this. Let me go back to Joseph's dream, verse 37. And let me go to verse 6. 37 and 6. He said to them, listen to this dream I had. We were binding sheaves of grain out of the field when suddenly my sheaf rose and stood upright, while your sheaves gathered around mine and bowed down to it. Remember, his brothers came and bowed down to him? His brothers said to him, do you intend to reign over us? Will you actually rule us? And they hated him all the more because of his dream and what he had said. Then he had another dream, and he told it to his brothers. Listen, he said, I had another dream, and this time the sun, the moon, and the 11 stars were bowing down to me. So here's the thing. Think about this. That's why they always say, you know, when you're dreaming these dreams and you write down your plans and visions and your goals, you have to keep that to yourself. You have to hone on that, and you have to just nurture it and cultivate it and keep it to you. Write that thing out. I advise you to write that thing out and focus on it, but you don't have to go tell all these people, I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that and I'm going to do this. Now you're bragging. Hold tight to your dream. Hold tight to your vision and make it what it is and make it what you want to be, and write that thing down so it can come to fruition. But right here, and this is NIV in my Bible, and it has this little, you know how they have those little breaking down of moments. It says big mouth. It says 37 verse 8, big mouth. God revealed Joseph's future by means of 2 dreams. Foolishly, Joseph told everything to his brothers, who hated him all the more. The spoiled and naive Joseph we met here is a different character from the careful, prudent leader who would emerge from prison years later to lead Egypt. So here's the thing. God had matured Joseph, because Joseph was 17 when he had that dream initially. And then, and his father put a robe on him, right? His father had this beautiful robe. That's another thing I wanted to talk shortly about. Parents and having their favorite child. Parents shouldn't have a favorite child. We know that we shouldn't. Do my parents have a favorite child? One of my parents, you know who their favorite child is, and they not afraid to say who their favorite child is, and we all peep the favorite child. My other parent may not have actually identified as much as the other one who their favorite child is, but we all felt like we knew who their favorite child is. Now, that child has fallen from their grace, and it's like they trying to stump them. But anyway, let me focus. So you shouldn't have a favorite child. And the brothers felt this, their father having a favorite child, and it made them feel so certain kind of way towards him. And I'm not gonna lie, I believe that one of our parents who identifies their favorite child, and we know they have their favorite child, we feel like a certain kind of way because we don't feel heard. We don't feel understood. We don't feel like what we're saying means nothing until that favorite child says something. Then like the earth and the moon and the stars moves around, you know? And so that's another thing I wanted to say. When he was talking about, he had another dream, the sun, the moon, and the 11 stars, baby, 11 stars. That was them brothers. That was them brothers except Benjamin. No, I mean, that was all of the brothers, all of them except him. They had bowed down before him. So think about that, parents. Now, if my children were to say, do I have a favorite child? Does J-Love have a favorite child? Maybe they would say it, but I don't feel like I have a favorite child. Now, we do have children that are more obedient, or do they work better, or clean up and whatever. So we just like, I'm like this. I'm like, okay, my baby doing it, but I don't feel like I'm like, oh yeah, y'all all, oh yeah. But I felt like my parents did do that. But anyway, let's focus. And so now Joseph, when this time happened, when he was placed in Egypt, when he was the head, when he had that dream over Pharaoh and told him what to do, and Pharaoh said, you are the best option to put the plan and make the plan happen by saving up the crops and the grain, and you know, and God revealed, he said, your God revealed everything that's going to happen. Joseph is 30 years. So what's that? 30 minus 17, what? That's how many years Joseph had to learn this lesson, and that's how many years God taught him and molded him, and he stayed faithful to the Lord. And how long was Joseph in the valley? Joseph was in the valley a long time. What is that, 13 years? Joseph was in the valley, 13 years. Joseph was in the valley for 13 years. You know what I'm saying? We don't normally, we have our storms in our valley, but it may not be that long. And some of us, it is that long. But 13 years Joseph was in the valley. 13 years God was maturing Joseph. For 13 years, he was making him, preparing a way for him to do the things that God needed him to do. Isn't that beautiful? Isn't that loving? You know, yeah, he went through some things, but now you in charge. Now Joseph is working. Now let's not mistake, because Joseph got to say, he was the one that's giving the grain and say no. And you know, think of it, all them people was coming to him. It reminds me of when Moses had, when in Exodus, when Moses was leading the people out, and Jethro, his father-in-law, came and he said, Moses, all them people got to come to you? He said, baby, don't do it that way. He said, let me put you on game. Modern words. He said, you get some God-fearing aldermen, and let them assign the people to them, and let them come and say yes or no if they right or wrong. Let them rule over them, and you just oversee. If it's the real hard cases, you take a little break. Now you doing too much work. But here Joseph was working. You hear me? Joseph was in charge. You get grain, you get a little bit of this grain. You can't get no grain. Get them some grain. What y'all got to give? Man, Joseph worked that drought all the way out to where everybody in Egypt and wherever else that was coming there, they was given a land. They was like, we don't have no more money. We don't have no more land. We can just give our bodies. They became slaves and everything else except for their preachers and things of that nature, whatever you would call them then. But here I wanted to say in Genesis 41, I'm going to say this and then we're going to get off of the YouTuber. In Genesis 41, you remember when Joseph's father gave him that robe? Okay, let me see. Okay, so Genesis 37:3. Now Israel loved Joseph more than any of his other sons, because he had been born to him in his old age, and he made an ornate robe for him. And all his brothers and everybody was jealous about it, right? So here we go. Let's go. that's when he was 17, right? So let's go to 41. Let's go to Genesis 41:41. Joseph in charge of Egypt. 41. So Pharaoh said to Joseph, I hereby put you in charge of the whole land of Egypt. Ain't God good? Then Pharaoh took his signet ring from his finger and put it on Joseph's finger. He dressed him in robes of fine linen and put a gold chain around his neck. Boy, they had them gold chains back in the day, huh? So here's the thing. Joseph was adorned with a beautiful robe that his father gave it to him out of favoritism, but that was where he was going to go. That was his future. That was foreseen but not seen, but it was foreseen by Joseph. He saw it, but he didn't know, how it was going to end, of course. And then when Joseph got to Pharaoh and Pharaoh's house, out of prison, baby, he was in prison. He was like, Lord, he was praying a prayer. Lord, Father God, I'm in prison now. I didn't touch that woman and so on and so forth. And for Joseph to be able to be adorned with his signet ring, I'm in charge, to this gold chain, to a beautiful linen robe. Ain't God good? God will take us places and we don't know where we going, and it's his will, and we don't know how it's going to look when we get there, but he got us. That's the good thing. That's glory, glory, glory. Thank you, Father God. Thank you all. 00J Love.